then please let us know. So let's get started. Should we run the open?
Yeah, let's
We
run
want
the
to run
open.
the open as soon as I find it.
And then we have to wait the delay until they see the open.
Right. Okay, here we go. Here's our open. We're officially starting. Oh, I can't talk because it's going to mess it up. All right. So, welcome, everybody. Let me get rid of this thing. You don't need to see that anymore. There's us. So, today's featured drink, because we're going to try to feature a drink every week. And I know my good friend Doug Drexler just posted this, but we're going to do this. Goes back, those of you who are lucky enough to go to the Las Vegas Star Trek experience might have gone to Quark's Bar, and you may have gotten to have one of these, which is called the Warp Core Breach. There's all the multiple ingredients. It is a two-person drink. Let me get my mouse out of there. And I'm just going to leave this up for a few seconds. I'm going to post it to the Facebook page so you can look it up if you want to make this thing. You kind of need the dry ice to make it all smoky, but I actually had a couple of these and they are aptly named. So moving on. If I can get rid of this now. Oops, that's not it. There we go. Okay, that's gone. Okay, so Babylon 5.
Well, that one on five. So wait, raise a toast to our friends who joined us for this madness.
Cheers. I have to put the glass like right in front of my face because if I go, it just disappears
Cheers
into.
to all you
It
guys
just
out
goes
there.
into a wormhole or something. Salud, as the Italians say.
Ooh.
All right, we got past the drinking part. Um, so Babylon 5. Let me keep. We're drunk already. We haven't even said anything yet. What was great? This is Babylon 5. Really was groundbreaking for its day. In the
Yes.
sense that it was one of the first. I'm going to lose the background because it's driving me crazy. Everybody's seen it. We'll just get rid of it. Bye. Here's my office, Nerdvana. There's Baylock. Hello, Baylock. I'm gonna block Baylock. So anyway, it was one of the it was one of the first shows that actually went with the story arc. So it was basically when Straczynski came up with it. His idea was this is going to be not episodic like we've seen in the past, where you could jump into a show at any point and watch because each show was its own self-contained story. But so what his was is, and his was planned from day one to be 5 seasons and the story would arc across those 5 seasons, and that was going to be it. So at the time, that was pretty groundbreaking because a lot of people were like, "You can't do that. If they miss an episode, they're gonna be like, I don't know what's going on. They're not gonna come back to it." Obviously, he was right because pretty much every TV show now is story arcs. They don't do episodic
Oh yeah.
anymore. So that was it. Now he had pitched it to Paramount originally. Paramount passed, and then he went to an independent, and they picked it up. They did the movie, um, The Gathering, I think it was called, and they did that, and it tested so well. They released that on, I think, on TBS, or it might have been. It did well, and then they announced that they were going to make the series, which we saw. So and of course, there's the controversy that Deep Space Nine came out right around the same time. So we're very fuzzy. I
Yes.
don't know what
But
Bruce
they're
is. That
very.
is.
I don't know what that means. Very fuzzy.
It's probably just
Also,
crap,
we've lost all our viewers. So.
crappy internet. No, I still got 10, 9.
Oh,
They're
okay. Oh,
dropping like flies. We're boring them
dropping
already.
like flies.
Didn't take
Oh
long.
yeah. Um. But yes, back to Deep Space Nine. They, yeah, they were very, very different. The only thing they had in common is they were both space
Space
stations, and that
station
was it.
based, and they went with the story arc because they basically
I
had the
mean, yeah,
whole. Now
yeah,
I think the Okudas are going to jump on this, so they could probably tell us. But the Dominion War part, I think, was added after they started. I don't know if they originally, when they started out the series, they were going to bring that in. But that's for another show. We're talking about B5. So the other thing I really liked about Babylon 5 was the writing was really good in my opinion, in the sense that the way they brought the different characters together.
Yeah.
The two main ambassadors, Malari and Jakar, um, you see this whole kind of, they hate each other because the Londo's people kind of invaded and took over for many years over Jakar's people, and then they were able to rebel and eject the Centauri off their world. So they hated each other, but then they had this love hate relationship. But by the end of the series, they were like really they were friends. Actually, Jakar became kind of the bodyguard for Londo.
The, yeah, their relationship was almost Shakespearean in the way it kind of evolved.
Yeah, I mean it really was. It was kind of a space opera in a lot of ways, um, because I mean minus the music. But I mean, you did have that, and to me, that was one of the best. And they got really good actors to play those parts. I mean, you just
Yeah,
really,
Peter Jurassic and Andreas.
yeah, Andreas Casolta. I can never pronounce his name, Casolta. But
Sorry, I
anyway,
butchered
but
that name.
yeah, the
Yeah,
one armed
they
man,
did
I
a
might
great.
add, he was also the one armed man in the movie version of
Was
uh, of
he?
of
Yeah, yeah,
what's the word? What's the
yeah.
movie I'm
Tommy Lee
thinking of,
Jones.
guys? Johnny
Isn't that what the
Jones,
word?
The
Yeah,
Fugitive,
yeah, yeah. I know exactly what movie you're talking about.
The Fugitive.
The Fugitive. Yes.
So yeah, so he was the one arm man, but he played in a lot of other stuff. But yeah, it was just I don't know what it was. It really worked. It was almost like a Kirk Spock kind of thing. I mean, not really the same type of relationship, but it was just like that magic that kind of just you know they just
Yeah.
meshed perfectly together, and their banter
Yes.
back and forth. I thought was so good. Um, they
You
had.
mentioned you mentioned how good the writing was. Just super quick. The writing was by turns. They were Shakespearean elements. They were almost Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien elements. There was all kinds of influences. And when you look at it, like 92 of the 100 and however many episodes were written by Straczynski. And the other few episodes that were written by other people, most of the names are names we will recognize. Eva Gerald, Harlan Ellison, D.C. Fontana,
Mm,
Neil Gaiman wrote one. Peter David, who's a Star Trek guy, wrote one. And then a couple other people, Stephen Frost and Lelio, I don't know the other guy's name.
yeah,
So yeah, so those few episodes that weren't written by J. Michael were all written by Star Trek alum.
right.
So yeah, it had that familiar feel to it. Yeah, it was great. It was epic, like epic writing.
Yeah.
I'm told he carried the writer's Bible around with him. The writers weren't allowed to see it, but he always had it with him to make sure the show was going where he wanted it to
Yeah,
go.
yeah, it was definitely his baby from day one. He kind of was very Roddenberry like about it, as far as that was he was in full control of the show. And of course, talking about Star Trek one, you can't Walter Koenig. I mean, as Bester played that part really well. I
What?
mean,
Yes,
you
Wanda
love to
Maximoff
hate
was on
Bester.
it.
Bester was he was a weasel in a lot of ways, but he had his agenda, and pretty much, he just wasn't going to deviate from that. Um,
Yeah, he was amazing as Bester. Yeah.
yeah, and I never talked to Walter about it personally. Maybe somebody has, and they could but I think he really enjoyed that because it got him out of not only the Chekhov role, but it gave him a little bit more range for his acting, that he could be somebody other than Pavel Chekhov.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
a lot of these actors fell, we think of then how cool it would have been to play so and so on Star Trek, but they were like, this is a job and I want to move on to something else. So, I think for him to be able to do Babylon 5 is probably his next most well known role. I know he had a few
So
little roles here and
yeah.
there, but he was never a
Yeah.
regular on anything else, and somebody can correct me on that. Certainly not. Um,
Ken Schmidt
yeah,
said Bester the teep,
yeah, that's what the teeps for
the
telepaths.
teep you love to hate.
You love to hate. You're
Yeah, the
right, Kent. He
TP.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. And the other thing, the whole thing with the telepaths, that was a whole interesting arc too, because you could think about really, when you think about what if that was real, like people really could, there were a segment of the population that could read other people's minds. Imagine what that would be like even today, or in any society that, half can and half can't. I mean, I yeah, there was,
Oh,
it's going to be a war, it was like,
yeah.
there's just no way around it. So that was inevitable. And I think, whether the way they went about it was right or wrong, it was a good story arc. And of course, it was obviously very key to the story because you needed telepaths to fight the shadows from Zaha Doom. Was the only way you could stop their doom. It was a great name for a planet, right? Zaha Doom. I mean, it pretty much doesn't say that it's. You go to Zaha Doom, you're not expecting daisies and palm trees. I'm thinking it's gonna be exactly how they portrayed it, a horrible place that you just don't want to stay around. It's not like you're finding an Airbnb. It's a doomed for vacation. So, and the other cool thing about the show, I'm kind of jumping around because my brain's moving all over the place with this, but one of the neatest things was the special effects on that show. Again, was one of the first shows that went completely CGI on their space type special effects. They didn't use models, and I think the difference was I had written a note down to give you an idea. To do an episode of Deep Space Nine at the time was 1.5 million. At least that's what they're saying on the internet. To do an episode of B5 at the time was 650,000. So that's less than half of what it cost. So you're getting two for one.
Yeah.
And
you could see where they had to save money.
And some and I was working production then, and I was the computers and the graphic stuff was just coming into it, and everything was on Amiga video toasters was what they were called. They were run on Amiga platform. They eventually went to a Mac and PC, but originally they were Amiga. Amiga's not even around anymore. That the whole company. I think the only thing their only claim to fame was those video toasters, and they used to have. I remember reading articles. They used to have massive arrays of these things rendering, video, and it wasn't even standard def. It was standard definition. It wasn't high def. Because if you watch the show now in HD, you can tell that it's a standard definition show. The other interesting thing about Babylon 5 is that Straczynski was again ahead of his time. Is he shot that 16:9, and they cropped it. They cropped it. Yeah, they cropped it to 4:3 for TV.
Yes. Yeah.
But he was ahead. He was.
Film.
Yep.
Why? Yeah, and then they put it on videotape to do all the effects. So that begs the question: can they remaster it?
I don't know, because the last time I watched it was on Amazon Prime. I think it's a good question. It should be remastered, in my opinion. It's if it hasn't, because when I watched it on Amazon Prime, it was clearly standard definition. I mean, you're watching it on a 60, 65-inch TV, and then you can notice right away that it's not high def. So if it's on film, they should be able. But the problem is those. I don't know if those effects were ever rendered in HD, or at least at that level, at the film level. I think that's probably part of the problem. They would have to go back and, again, not knowing anything about that stuff.
Neither do I. I read one thing that talked about, if they really wanted to do it, they'd have to go back and get the film.
And then they'd have to redo all the graphics.
Yeah.
So
it would be a massive project. I don't know. That's something we could Google, and maybe people who are on the inside might know a little bit. It's maybe a Darren document question. He might know if it's possible to remaster B5.
Yeah, he would probably know. Yeah, Bruce was saying you couldn't have done the motion of the Star Furies with models. That was the other cool thing. Speaking about Star Furies, thank you, Bruce. Speaking of Star Furies, those things, I thought one thing I liked about the show was the physics of how those ships worked were more realistic. Not super realistic, but that they were pretty much reaction jets, that they could fly backwards without actually having to thrust. They would just spin around because they were still, momentum was still carrying them in one direction. Stuff like that I thought was pretty cool, because that was, they didn't fly around like you see in a lot of ships, even in Star Trek, flying like they're in the air. They're not. They're in space, so the physics are all different. We see in a lot, if you look at The Expanse is probably the most realistic science fiction show I've ever seen as
Yeah,
far as space
yeah, that
physics
one
go.
guy shooting the
You
rain
know,
and he
yeah.
just
The only thing is they still have sound, but I guess
fell asleep.
they couldn't go full Kubrick on it and not have any sound.
That was like his
Sound and
sadistic
smell
part
does
too. I
not
was like,
travel through space.
oh my god.
Spock told us that.
But getting back to the Star Fury, so they're mounted. Do you remember they were mounted like this, and then they
They would
rotated
drop,
down,
yeah, and then they would
and then drop down.
fire right
So how do
out.
they park? Like when you're done and you go home,
Well,
you just
they
grab
would
the
come
engine.
in like
How does that work?
Galactica. It was kind of like, I believe it was like Galactica. They would come into another bay, and then they would
And
get
then get hooked
reset.
right up
They would
again.
it would come in and they would hook them up like that. Yeah, I think that's there might have been footage of that at one time. I don't know if anybody. Again, I don't have every single episode and scene committed to memory. Um,
I just was curious. I was watching them drop, and I was like, well, how did they get back in there?
so, Denise and Mike Okuda, how you doing? No, we can't see you. We're just chatting. We're the only people you can see. You have to listen to us, so
We're
you
chatting. Denise and like missed the beverage.
you can yes
Although they
for
may have
their
had it with Doug if Doug
yeah.
was
Well, I saw that, but I think
yeah.
that was an old picture because otherwise they're not social distancing. That was an old picture. It had to be. So anyway, according to Rob Morrow says only SD on Google Play. Yeah, that's it. I don't believe it's available in HD. I wish they would because it really would. If somebody remastered it and could remaster the special effects, I think it had really good looking. The space scenes were really good. I like even
The
the
battles were good. Yeah.
yeah. I mean
The stuff like layouts, like consoles, they didn't focus on. Like that was not their priority.
no
The
no
scenes, the battles, and the
right.
shit
It
was
was all
pretty
like a
cool.
lot of their focus was exterior. They didn't do a lot with consoles and techie stuff.
No.
That wasn't the focus. Focus was the story. That you had this evil living in the universe, and of course we find out that this is kind of a recurring thing that they do to try to force, I guess, evolution of the species to fight each other every once in a while and then rebuild, and it moves things along. Of course, the people that are in that situation don't think it's such a great idea. Um, but
Yeah, Denise says Babylon was never done in HD. Yeah, no,
yeah, it was 16 by 9, but it was
yeah.
so. Yep. Okay. Thank you, Denise. Good to know. You were probably working in the industry certainly then on DS9. So, but was DS9? I'll ask Denise or Mike. Was DS9 originally shot? That was shot on film, correct?
Yeah,
Any of those?
Babylon was shot on
Yeah.
film. And then rendered to video when they did the effects.
Right. Right. So what did you like about the show? What did you find that, or you guys can chime in on online?
Yeah,
What is it that
I'll confess to everyone that when I put that little poll up, I voted Ghostbusters.
Yeah, so did I.
Or I would have been very happy with Red Dwarf because I am a huge Schneidhead. Love me some Red Dwarf. But when you said Babylon, I had a bit of a panic because I had not seen Babylon since it was released, and honestly, back then, it didn't grab me. It didn't. I watched it kind of half-heartedly. So you said, okay, we're doing Babylon. I was like, okay, I'm going to cram the show. And I have been watching Babylon for the past 48 hours. Oh my God, I get it. That was like this huge, sweeping, epic saga. He had Shakespearean elements. He had Tolkien elements. He had Jakar quoting Yeats, William Butler Yeats, to he was
Yep.
doing that poem. It's called The Second Coming. And he had just all this stuff crammed in. And the other thing I missed the first time around is all the foreshadowing. He had so much foreshadowing. He dropped all kinds of little hints, left, right, and center, and it just went to me. And now second watch, I'm like, okay. So if you're out there, if you voted for Red Dwarf or Ghostbusters or Star Wars, may I recommend maybe giving Babylon another look? It's better than you remember it. It's way better than you remember
Yeah,
it.
it is. It really was a good show, and I loved it when it was on. I tuned in every week, for it along with all the other, DS9 and TNG and all those that were on at the same time. It was really the '90s were a pretty good time there for a while with shows for science fiction lovers. There was quite a bit out there and a lot of good stuff, and I think a lot of stuff that probably might have made it better today with the options of streaming and everything we have. You didn't have to, before back then, if you missed it, you had to have your VCR set up to tape it. They didn't do a lot of reruns on this stuff, even really, summertime maybe, but for the most part, it was still pretty much the way it had been for many years, as you watched it when it aired or you missed it. So, thank God for the invention of the videotape. Otherwise, I would have missed a lot of TV, especially working overnights and stuff like that. But yeah, I loved it. Show. I was hooked. I was really disappointed with the last season. I almost thought they should have just ended it at season 4. It just wasn't. It just didn't have the same pull.
I agree.
The whole. I mean, I think they had to do something with the war of with the telepaths. I mean, but it just, I don't know if the writing was different or what it was. It just didn't pull me in like the original story did. Um,
Yeah, I guess the story was they thought they were canceled after season 4, so they rushed to make sure they finished the story arc.
yeah, I
And then
mean,
season 4, and then it was like, oh, surprise, you get season
yeah,
5, and they're
I
like,
think
oh, what
I
are we
think
going to do with it?
it also with Ivanova leaving, that kind of and bringing in the other captain to take over her place. It was a whole
Yeah, and
financial and contract
Claudia
thing going
Christian was,
on with
yeah,
Claudia.
Claudia
Yeah,
Christian was loved by the fans by then too. So
yeah, they did bring her back in the films, but I think at that point it was. But I thought that was kind of, and then of course then they tried to pull. They did the spin-off Crusade, which I didn't think was that bad. But again, it was wrought with problems. TBS, I think, was going to pick it up, and then they didn't want it, or they didn't want to finish it, or pay to have it finished. And then Sci-Fi, I think, was going to pick it up, and they couldn't fit it in their budget to finish it. So it's at 13 episodes, and that was the end of it. Gary Cole had to go do Office Space.
yeah,
So
Denise was just saying what I heard too. She said she typed, our understanding is the show essentially ended at the end of the 4th because they thought they were canceled. And yeah, that's kind of what I had read too as I was doing my research for this.
yeah, I mean, I think there was some controversy over whether that was true or not. I think because what I had heard initially was that the 4th season, and they were going to end it at the 4th season because that was kind of the climax. They win the Shadow War. Sheridan's
I think
president.
he had written it out for 5, but when he thought he was canceled, he said, "Oh, we better
Yeah,
wrap this up."
but see, then it was the popular opinion that it was. I thought ratings were doing pretty well. I don't know why they would thought they were being canceled, but because from my understanding, I mean, going back, the information that was not read. We had internet back then, but it wasn't like it is today. It was all just bulletin boards, and
Oh
there
yeah,
wasn't a lot of.
Straczynski was one of the first users of the internet to generate like what's the word grassroots support for
Yeah,
his show.
yeah. I mean, yeah. Remember the time? I mean, we take internet so it's for granted now, but it wasn't around. As much. I mean, you had those dial-up servers. You had CompuServe and Prodigy, and
I
and you'd get
didn't
on
know
and
that.
you had
That's
some
a
of the
good one.
dedicated bulletin boards that you could get on. These really dark corners of online. I didn't even call it the internet because you were dialing to somebody's private server just to chat or whatever. So,
So yeah. So let's take a second here just to tell everyone, hey, we want to hear from you. Please, you're all typing. I love it. Keep the conversation going in the chat. We both love it. We want to hear from you. What did you love best about Babylon 5? Was it the costumes? Was it the makeup? Was it their effects as such as they were back then? Was it the story? What grabbed you about Babylon 5?
and silence. I feel like I got to keep
And
talking.
silence, a very
Silence.
long
Okay.
silence.
It's like funny. I wish I could see it scroll, but I have to manually scroll
Yeah,
this.
I have to physically scroll it, so I have to catch up.
The days
Yeah.
after
Oh,
Startup
I was
before the
watching
internet.
episodes, and you know who was on? Robin Sachs. Robin Sachs played Saris, the big baddie in that Galaxy Quest.
Yeah.
Like when I'm watching, I see so many familiar names. Roy Dottress was on there. He was just on Game of Thrones, and
Mm,
like there are so many names and so many familiar faces. You're like,
That's
oh, I know that guy. Oh, I know that guy.
yeah.
Oh, I know that guy. There's that guy, Von Armstrong, Von something that's been like in every Star Trek episode. Not really,
Yeah.
I'm lying to you, but in many Star Trek, he was on it. Like there's so many people. He says we love the story. The fact it was written by someone who knew and loved science
Yep.
fiction. Yeah, he really did.
Yep.
He
Rob
really did.
Rob
And not
Barnes
just
says
sci-fi. He put tons of
Rob
stuff in there.
Michael Ansara was made an appearance. That's right. He was a techno mage. Um,
Yeah.
yep. On that, there was true. There's
Bruce like Ivanova.
yeah. I mean, everybody loved Ivanova because she was tough, and she
She was
didn't take
awesome.
any crap,
She
and
she was Katie Sackhoff before Katie
yeah,
Sackhoff was
in a
Katie
lot of
Sackhoff.
ways, you're right, and it's true. Everybody, it was. I wouldn't call it groundbreaking, but she was, you know, uh, she played the character well. She was not a fluff, and and she was gay, which we found out later. So there was that too. So they were a little ahead. Ivanova,
No,
yeah.
Katie
No,
Sackhoff
no,
was.
no. Ivanova, the character was gay, or at least she bi, if you want to call it that, because she was hooking up with this telepath. Somebody help me with her name, Talia.
She did. Wait a minute.
You
I
missed
thought she was all
that.
about the Ranger Marcus.
No, no. Marcus loved her. It was unrequited.
Oh, unrequited. Oh, that's right. That's why. Yeah,
Marcus
they
loved her,
said
and
all
that's
the
why
others
he
are
he
unrequited. No.
sacrificed his life to save her. But no, no.
Right.
She was with before Talia. We found out Talia was like a sleeper agent, and she got activated or whatever.
Just
Um,
says fine. Okay.
she yeah, so that was again ahead of for the time. It's funny, and at the time I watched it, and
Yeah.
it didn't even like it wasn't to me. I was like, oh my god, there's a gay person on the show. It was just like, okay, it
Yeah.
didn't work. It didn't bother me. I mean,
They, because they didn't make a big thing out of it.
right.
It was just
Yeah,
yeah,
it really
fine.
wasn't a big thing. So I mean, so again, there's another thing that they were kind of a little bit ahead of the curve on with the show that, and I don't remember hearing any again not being as tapped into the fan base as we are today with Facebook pages and all the other junk that that fans can voice their opinion. Um, I don't remember hearing any kind of flap about that. Oh my God, how did they get away with this? Why were they doing this? It's crazy. So see what else
Yeah.
we got? I was trying to read through
Ted
some of
just
these.
said Ted said he loved Delen's speech to the bad guys, to the bad fleet. Like when they came, like the writers are right
Yep,
hand. She brought all the Minbari.
yep,
If you value your lives, be
yep.
elsewhere.
It's
Yeah,
like
another
only
great
she
speech.
says only one commander has beaten the Minbari fleet, or one human commander. He's
And
like
he's
he's
behind me.
behind me. You're in front of me. So yeah, if you value your lives, leave. So yeah, that was kind of a badass moment for Delenn. And she's interesting because she didn't like Sinclair at first, quite because and initially I think because she was what's the word I'm looking, her leader there that got killed, not by him but by the humans, and so she was the one that really started the war. If you remember from the
Yeah. Yes.
flashback,
Yes.
she's the one that
She
said
tried
kill
to
kill
atone
them
for that.
all because she was so distraught at this misunderstanding. Of course, they didn't think it was a misunderstanding. They didn't realize it was that this human
Yeah.
commander fired on them unprovoked. So that she kind of had to do this big turnaround when she found out that
Yes.
Sinclair ends up being Valen and has to go back in time with the whole. I love that whole Zathras thing, by the way. The guy that
Yes.
there was so many
Yes.
different Zathras, and
Tim. Is that Tim Chose who played Zathras? Just the way he talked and referred to himself. That was awesome. No, the whole Sinclair reveal was brilliant. I don't know if that actor, if he had stayed on as Sinclair, I don't know how that would have been pulled off, but it was like genius, the Sinclair reveal. That
well,
he
I no,
actually
again, that was always planned.
war without end.
That was
That's
planned.
awesome.
That was planned that he was only going to be the first season commander, and then they were going to bring in Boxleitner. I mean, I don't know if it was they had planned that it was going to be Boxleitner, but that again was all part of his story arc that he was gonna because he had to go back in time with Babylon 4.
Yes.
I love the fact that they explained too that there was a 1 through 4 and they all went bad. It's like, would you get on the fifth one? I don't know. It's like, I mean,
Because fifth time's the
I mean, you
charm.
could
You
almost
know,
say like the
it's
first one, like there was nothing, there was really wasn't anything before
well,
Babylon
the
4, and that
first
one
three
disappeared.
went bad. The
Yeah,
first three went bad.
yeah,
The fourth just mysteriously
disappears, right? Just
disappeared until we
disappears.
found out what happened.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a good story, and the whole Zathras thing, and again going back to Straczynski's kind of whole story arc, and you really can't do that kind of thing well if you don't have it planned out from the beginning, because you have to lay the groundwork for all that stuff to happen to fit into place properly, in my opinion. And they did that really
Yeah,
well.
Denise is saying she. Sorry, I'm just backtracking a little bit. Her understanding is that changing the commander was a pivot by J. Michael Straczynski. So that's interesting.
A pivot in what meant that it wasn't planned? Is that what you're saying, Denise? That it was that, or is it you're saying is that it was intended as a pivot point? I guess I'm not
I
sure which one you way
thought
you
I
meant.
understood, and this is complete hearsay, so this could be a lie. I thought I understood that that actor was not doing well. He was having health problems or mental health problems,
Oh,
and
really?
he needed to leave the
I
series.
did not
Yeah.
know that.
So, I don't know if it was meant to be him the whole time, and then he got revealed, and then he gets revealed in season two, and then what were they gonna do for seasons? Because supposedly he had 5 seasons right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't he on? Was he on a Star Trek on like a maybe? I could have sworn I saw him. He was in something else space wise.
They're around. They're all
Yeah,
around. What was
I
his
want to say
name?
he was on like a DS9 or TNG or something.
He might
As
have
a
been.
as a one off kind of a
But
he was
there's
like an
so
admiral
many
or
of them. Guess
something.
guess
Yeah, he
guest
was like an
interviews.
admiral or
Yeah,
something. I
there's
want to say that he
so
was.
many of them. Yeah,
So
yeah. Denise is saying my understanding is that the change of commander was not planned and that JMS needed to recast the part. That's kind of what
oh,
I was reading on the
okay.
internet today. But it was
The hell
brilliant.
do
He
I know?
did super well, and then pulling him back season two or season three, season two for War Without End. Brilliant, brilliant
Yeah.
writing. That was really great. So yeah, I loved it. That
Yep.
was a big reveal. Like at the moment, it was like, oh my god.
One of the
Yeah.
other little things I liked about the show was the things they would stick in, like with the Centauri, who was like, as much as Centauri are like the love to hate race because they're basically sleazy, but or at least Londo is, but they're funny because you remember they were. If you watch a lot of the show, you find out that the Centauri were the first race that the humans made contact with, first alien
Oh,
race,
they're,
and
they're
basically
both
they
fantastic.
tried to snow us into thinking that we were some kind of spin-off of their like seed, like they see like somehow, and of course we found out that eventually there's no commonality between our two races, and then they were the ones that least to us the warp gates. What do they call them? What the heck would they call them? The star, not stargates. That was
The jump points.
jump
Gates.
gate. Thank you. I'm losing my brain. The jump gates. We rented them from the Centauri so that we could get out till we could build our own. So it was kind of an
You
interesting. Yeah,
did.
if you watch the
The
show, that does it
Minbari,
comes
because
up.
I thought the Minbari had a ship that would generate its own
Well,
jump
they
gates. I
that's
thought
true.
that was
Eventually,
really
you're right. You're
cool.
right. Many ships didn't need them, but the Earth ships did. Initially, you couldn't go anywhere without a gate. It's the
Interesting.
same way that it's like
Interesting.
the Star Furies. The Star Furies can jump. They can only jump into hyperspace through the jump gate, but like the bigger ships have the power or whatever to generate their own jump gate or jump point, I should say.
So,
So
guys, everyone start typing. Ready? Of all the ships, and there were a lot, which one did you like the best? And of course, I have to say the White Star because, the White Star.
yeah,
It was cool.
it was cool. I like the Agamemnon. I think maybe because of the name more than the.
The Agamemnon, the Pollux. Oh, they all had great
They had
names.
good names.
In true Star Trek fashion, they were
Yeah,
all
they had good
brilliant. The
names, and
ship
I also like
battles.
the way that the humans hadn't figured out artificial gravity like everybody else did, but humans didn't know because they still had the spinning sections of their ships.
Oh
They
yeah,
would
the
still
humanoid.
rotate
Yeah,
to
that.
create. They
But
didn't have
everyone's
like
debating. Everyone's talking about the jump gates. That the bigger ships
yeah.
had
Buck
a lot of
Rogers
jump
is a
gates.
Stargate. You're right,
Some little
Bruce
ships
or
couldn't
Roy
do it.
rather.
Oh,
Sorry,
there's Fez. Hi Fez.
is Fez? It's a Fez.
It's a Fez. Type hi Fez.
Yes, yeah, I know. That's we said that,
No
Ken.
one's answering my question. What ships did you like? You didn't. Oh, and Miss Denise says Star Fury.
Star
Everyone
Fury
else
was
is
a good
White Star.
design. Yeah, it was a good design. I like the way the whole little cockpit used to eject. Like if they had to
Yeah,
eject
yeah, the
out of the thing,
ball
like
would
the
just
whole
come
thing
out.
would
Yeah.
just come pop off, and it was a good design. I liked how the telepaths there had their own more advanced version of they had their own advanced version of the Star Fury that was the
they
Psychors.
they had them advance like yeah, the whole fleet of Star Furies.
Yep.
The White Star was an awesome ship, and they used it a lot. They were on kind of thing, but we needed to see a little more of it. A little more of it. It needed to be fleshed out a little more. See more of its capabilities.
Well, I think you
Um,
saw. I mean, it was pretty. I don't know how much more fleshed out. I mean, it had some. It was pretty maneuverable. It had it was the firepower on it was because it could do that one beam out the big giant shot that would just rip through a ship from this. That one central laser, whatever you want to call it. Who was one of the Rangers on one of those ships? Another guy that pops into like every damn show that's out there is Cranston.
oh yeah, Brian
Brian
Cranston plays
Cranston.
Captain
He was one of the
whatever.
Rangers. Yeah, yeah.
Erickson, something like
I
that.
don't
Yeah,
remember the
that's his
character's
name.
name, but he's the guy is like in everything.
Brian Cranston is in there. He makes everything better
He does.
because
He
we like
does.
Brian
Yeah.
Cranston.
So see, Bruce likes the White Star. Um, Anybody else? Let me scroll down
Yeah, so
here.
Miss Denise is saying artificial gravity from centrifugal force is cool, but very expensive to depict on the screen because of set costs and visual effects. Which is why we saw, as the show progressed, we saw more ships with non-centrifugal artificial gravity. The only time we saw the inside of the Babylon, the only time, was you remember when
Well, you saw it,
Sheridan was on the train and they
right?
bombed the train
There
and
are
it was
other,
falling
yeah,
out of the train? That's the only time you see this huge
yep.
thing
That it's all built on
circling.
the
I
inside.
don't remember ever seeing it
There is a few
outside.
times where
I
they
don't
go to
remember
that
seeing it.
park. There's like a park that scene where they'll go to, and
Yeah.
I don't know if they ever showed it, but you're right. That was when we got it. We got that scene where Sheridan had to jump off of the
No,
monorail.
that was the big Kosh reveal.
Right. That was the
That scene
Kosh
was the big
reveal. That and it was everybody kind of saw them as their own different things,
I don't
basically.
remember ever seeing this huge spinning thing in any other shots. Maybe in season one.
Well, you see it on
Maybe.
the outside. The whole thing's rotating. If you look at the,
Yeah,
if you
no,
look
yeah,
at,
you want to see the outside
yeah,
rotating, but I
yeah,
want to see that like it's a 5 mile long ship.
right,
So I'm mentally thinking if it's 5 miles
right,
long, what's its diameter, right?
right. No,
It's
I
gotta
don't.
be
I don't also.
massive.
Yeah, yeah. Clearly, they built everything that you saw was Now, I don't know the way it looked too. It looks like the ops was at the front there, like where Ivana was always controlling what ships were coming in and out. That wasn't rotating, so I don't know how they had gravity in there, but maybe Minbari or somebody gave them some tech. Like Kent said, the White Stars did was a combination of Minbari and I think Vorlon tech in there as well. Um, so there was definitely some mixing.
Yeah, Rob Barnes is saying I love the flying saucers. I was noticing those flying saucers
Right,
too
that was
as
kind of
as we
another
were
race. We
rewatching.
know
I was
we
like,
don't
hey,
know the
they're
name of
like
that
pretty
race.
blue saucers.
Yeah, we never did. We never did. They didn't name a lot of those races. They were just the ancients. They didn't.
Yeah,
They
Miss
didn't.
Denise is saying the Zen Garden. Yeah,
Zen Garden. Yep. Yeah,
we
that's
saw those.
exactly it. Right, you're right, and Denise, exactly what I was talking about. There was like a garden where they would go to, and you might every once in a while you'd see that matte painting in the background of what looked
Oh,
like.
Miss Denise just made a very astute observation. She said the ops center should have been zero
That's
gravity.
that's
They
what I
should
was
have
saying.
been.
It should have been because it didn't. It wasn't. If you were where they at least depicted it from the outside, it wasn't on the rotating section. So the only thing I could
Yeah.
guess is either that was just
Yeah,
an
it's like
oopsie,
a
or they could say, well, we got a little bit of artificial grav from the Minbari
that
because it was supposed to be. Remember, it
yeah.
was a joint. It was jointly built. It wasn't just Earth that built it, or at least put into it. It was
Mm.
all the races, and the other races had artificial gravity. Just Earth was the only one that didn't seem to have it for whatever reason. So,
Yeah,
which
you're
I
right.
think was it's
Mm.
kind of funny by that time that they hadn't been able to buy that tech from somebody. Um,
Yeah,
but
you
they
would think.
didn't. But I like the way the Agamemnon
Right.
looked. I like the way I like the way the Earthships had like all these like antennas and stuff sticking out of the front. I don't know. They almost look
They were
almost. They
boxier.
kind of reminded
Yeah,
me
they
of
were
like
creepier.
Japanese anime spaceships in a lot of ways. Like
Yeah.
like the way they depict
Yeah,
that
they're the ones
stuff.
that put like things
There's like
sticking
all
out
these
of
like
it and like mouths and
antennas
stuff.
and
Yeah.
things sticking out of it. It's kind of like Red Dwarf without no.
It is kind of like Red Dwarf, but a weird boxy shape with things sticking out.
Yeah.
Or
So
the Nostromo is a little bit that way too. Maybe not.
no, the
So what do you
Nostromo.
think
The
about the
Nostromo is like a
uniforms?
giant refinery being pulled by a tug.
Yeah, I guess it is. You had a better analogy with Red Dwarf there. What do you think about the uniforms? Did they age okay? They were pretty good.
They're good
They looked
uniforms.
good.
The leather was a little weird. I thought, because
It
they
was
had
that
like
stripe of leather
it had like the part of leather that was a little strange to me. I don't know if that worked, but I think they looked good overall. And then of course they went to the what did they call when they broke away from Earth and they had the black uniforms that the
Yeah,
Minbari
those are
ones,
cooler.
the black ones, those were kind of cool. But there was a lot of political messages in there too. You know, we saw this stuff, of course, the whole thing with Clark and basically taking over the presidency and kind of corrupting the presidency. And, geez, you know, that's kind of paralleling some scary stuff. And, um, you know, you look at the other part of it was, you know, then you had like they put in, what do they call them? The Night Watch. Remember they had the
Yeah, oh yeah.
armbands. It was very,
The
very,
Night Watch
very
training for them.
Nazi Germany esque with the armbands and the.
Yeah, they were making some comments
Oh
on
yeah,
things.
it
And
was
that's okay,
clearly, it was
that's what
clearly,
we're
you
here to
know,
do.
it was a little bit obvious in the sense, but I mean, the fact that, but it worked. I mean, it just, you know, that clearly there was half the population was like, yeah, we're gonna support it, and the other half was like, this is just wrong. You know, it's just not right. So, um,
Some
it
good comments here. Let's see. I'm just scrolling back. Bruce says the Babylon was only built by Earth. He disagrees that the Minbari helped.
I thought it was all
Michael
races.
Okuda is saying, yeah,
No, I mean, I'm not. I'll have to go research that. I won't argue with him one way
yeah.
or the other.
Michael Okuda is saying that even in 2001 they didn't do zero gravity in the garage. I remember that too. Ken's saying, okay, this brings up another thing I'm desperately curious about. If any of you know, everyone start typing. Ken's saying they made a point of someone living in the down below as part of, and he's sleeping in a blanket and he's looking out the porthole on the floor, which is kind of weird, but okay. The down below is shown as being a little more, do I say, ghetto-y and kind of crime-ridden. If
Yeah.
you're on this massive space station with all these diplomats and it has to be the symbol of peace, don't you keep a little better control of like
Well, I guess
what's going on and
they
not
were.
so
Well, they.
ghetto?
That's good. That's a good point. They kind of explained that to somebody. They were people that um, they couldn't afford
And
to
they were
leave.
refugees.
Yeah, they couldn't afford to
So
leave, or they were refugees, so they got stuck there, and they couldn't afford to pay for quarters. They couldn't have paid, so they ended up in. I always considered down below like that section between that inner hall where you saw the the gardens and everything, and the outer hall. Somewhere it's like in there in that superstructure
yeah.
is where all that is because they had gravity, so they had to be and but yeah, I mean, you think if something's 5 miles long and how wide it is, I mean, you're gonna have some spaces probably where people,
Yes, and you
can
even
get
said about
lost.
there's a patrollable like the Garibaldi there. He should have been knowing
Well,
what was going on
I know what you're
that
saying. You're
side.
on it, and again, I think it was just that was a bit of a artistic license with it, saying that we're gonna have this. I mean, you're right. Probably something that's a finite space they should have been able to control fully,
Yeah,
even
in
with
the
even
space
with internal sensors and cameras and everything else. They could have known
exactly.
about where everything was going on, but then it wouldn't have had this like these dens of you know you will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
I was
So,
scum and villainy. Yeah. We need our scum and
so
villainy to keep the plot moving.
exactly. So I think again, it was a plot device if you want to look at it that way. 250,000 people got to figure someplace. There's transients. Kent
Yeah,
Schmidt. I was
and
like,
Bruce is
you're right.
saying that the gravity would have been heavier there too. Totally true.
Well, that's true.
Gravity
You're
would have
right
changed
because
the parts of the
the
ship.
that's true. That where you are on that spin is going to change. It's every all these shows you got to have. There's a little bit of it's not going to be 100% accurate. Kubrick didn't
And
make
that's
it.
okay. That's okay. I'm like a genius at suspending disbelief. Like I don't
You
care
have
about this
to.
kind of stuff when I'm watching it. Don't care. Don't care. Just tell me the story. I want
Yeah,
to know
that's
the
it, and that's
story.
what it is. It wasn't about that show was not about the tech. Okay, it wasn't. It
No,
wasn't.
no, no, not the way other shows
No,
are.
no.
Yeah.
It was somewhere between Star Trek and Star Wars in the sense that you had where Star Trek was more techy, trying to be more accurate, and then you had Star Wars, which whatever it didn't matter. You had you had space wizards. So it's my point was that it's story driven. It's not tech driven. So that and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. What's Bruce saying?
So what are
What?
you saying? What to?
Yeah, I don't know what
Bruce
Bruce's
is like
problem.
what?
He's just drunk on milk. Is what the problem
Drunk
is.
on
He's
milk.
too much dairy in your
Okay.
diet, Bruce.
Does
Cut the
everyone
diet.
have a beverage, and if so, what's everyone drinking? Try
Yeah.
not to do that. But yeah. So what was the other thing the writing, the costumes, oh, the makeup has kind of stood the test of time. I think they were creative makeups. A lot of heads, many foreheads. Like every alien had a forehead. So many foreheads. Everyone looked like this.
Well, I mean,
Oh,
like even
I understand why.
yeah. Well, even like Londo, yeah, he had kind of they had kind of the
They
bald.
all did. You know why? Because that's what you could make up, and then just put them in a costume and maybe give them gloves, and you're good to go. There's your extra. Because they had a cast. I mean, they had a cast of thousands. This not
Right.
hundreds. There were always extras running around that ship, a gazillion of them.
Yeah, there
And
was a lot
so,
of
and they were under budget, so they were.
I thought they did a pretty good job of making the basically the same theory that everybody in the universe is basically bipedal for the most part.
Yeah,
There was a few. They did have a few. They did have a few aliens that were like one that was in that. Remember, they had to go in the zone. They had to put. They called it the alien sector or something, and they had to put the masks on because the air was different. There was in there in the like one of the early episodes. There was like a big bug looking dude that was in there, kind of like praying mantis looking thing. But for the most
So
part,
I didn't make this connection back then in the 90s, but on this rewatch that I've just been doing, the Vorlons look exactly like the Mondashawans from
oh yeah, a
Fifth
little bit,
Element.
yeah, from Fifth Element.
Like they're all shoulder, and then
Mom the
there's this little
Gewans.
head that goes like this.
Yeah, yeah,
What's
a
up with
little bit.
that?
Of course, Babylon Five
That was like a
predates.
straight Luke Besson straight ripped off their
Yeah,
design.
it was. I don't know. It wasn't that similar. I don't
They
really.
weren't straight ripped. They weren't that.
Was
Just the way the little head was.
yeah. I don't. Yeah. I don't. Yeah. That's about the only commonality. Of course, that wasn't them. That was just their suit that they hid in because
That was their.
they
Yeah,
were
they had
really
to.
like.
Yeah.
I think they were really non corporeal. They were just energy.
Praying mantis. Yeah, they probably were. Denise, I like the praying mantis guy. I can't remember the praying mantis guy. I remember the squid face guy.
No, the praying mantis guy only showed up in that he was only ever in that alien zone. He was clearly a puppet. Um, but they didn't really flesh out. He was just like he was like a dealer of something illegal black market. He didn't have a big part. Yeah, there was the carrion eaters. The guys, those are the guys with the had kind of the squid mouths sort of things. They eat the dead,
Yeah.
the flesh. She's like, I like the praying mantis guy. Who doesn't? They're all cool. But and then you had I like the one episode they had in the first season with the Dilgar and then the what the hell was her name? The woman that basically she was the war criminal from the Dilgar War. She was like a scientist that came up with a way to. She should have been really old, but she was still young. But basically, she came up with a way to prolong life indefinitely. But the cost was you had to take other people's lives to do it to extract. It was one of the episodes because the Earth. There was a previous war before the Minbari War called the Dilgar War. Was the Dilgar were overrunning? They were kind of like the Nazis of the time. They were overrunning everybody, and so everybody got together and beat them back. So she was like a war criminal. She was like the Mangala of this race, and so you see all these parallels. But she was offering to any race that would basically pay her this gift of life of eternal life, but she was laughing to herself because what she basically was going to cause was another war because to maintain this immortality you had to kill other beings. You had to extract this life essence from.
Oh my
Yeah,
God,
it was
I remember any of
first
that. I
season
remember
stuff.
listening.
Yeah, it's in the first season. You probably skipped over it because it wasn't critical to the whole storyline. It was like one of the independent
Yeah.
stories. So it was
Do you remember the Jack the Ripper episode?
yes,
Like
that
the
was an
Thomas
excellent one.
Brown.
Right when he came to test Sheridan.
And by excellent, you mean. What do you actually mean?
What by what? You didn't like the episode?
Jack the Ripper, you're like, excellent.
No, I like the fact that because they always every show likes to bring Jack the Ripper into something because I think Star Trek did it obviously, and it's because it's like we don't never he was never caught, So the thing is that he was a horrible person on Earth, and the Vorlons came and snatched him up for whatever reason. That's why they never caught the guy because he just disappeared off the face of the Earth, and the Vorlons basically are making him be penance by bringing him back every once in a while to test people to see if they really are the savior of the universe that they think they are. And that's
It
why
was
he tested
okay, but
Dylan.
at the end when he was like, and some call me Jack, I was like, oh, he was going
Well,
through the dates. He's like London, 18, whatever.
yeah, I
And
mean, you kind of knew who he was. I kind of figured. I mean, I don't know if I was. I don't want to say that it was like some kind of genius thing, but I kind of figured out who he was earlier on. That
well, yeah,
I
we
mean,
all
he was
figured out
he
who he
was
was,
walking
but I
around with a
didn't think
top
it was
hat
like,
on. So there was. So what, I don't understand. What do you? What was the
it's
big?
like
Why do you
Friday
think
back
there was a big
then, and
reveal?
yeah.
I don't think there was a big reveal there. It was just. It was a good episode. He was
Okay.
trying to
It was
prove.
okay. I was kind of like,
He was trying to
why,
prove that she was really selfless. That she wasn't in it for the personal power. That she was really in it to be selfless. That it wasn't about her. So then that's what they were trying to get to, is that these people that think they're the savior, but they're not willing to sacrifice themselves.
Yeah.
So
All right. Since I mentioned that episode, everybody get typing over here in the chat. What are your favorite episodes, or what episodes stood out for you? For me, I think the Sinclair reveal. I really enjoyed that. That whole season, I like that season best, even better than season 4.
what, when he comes back as
Yeah, the Sinclair reveal, the Sinclair slash Minbari soul reincarnation thing reveal. That whole thing was clever. I thought, okay, that's clever. It solved the mystery of why the Minbari suddenly stopped and surrendered. Like, they were winning, they were killing us, and
right?
then suddenly, oh wait,
Yeah.
so yeah, those are my favorite episodes. That kind of that section.
For me, the favorite episodes aren't. I don't know if I have a favorite episode, but I have favorite either small storylines that happened or scenes of stuff that happened. One of my favorite ones was when Billy Mummy was there, or Mummy, or however you pronounce his name. I never quite get it right. Was helping. We didn't talk about Garibaldi, his character, at all. We probably should touch on him because he was
No,
also a
we
great.
probably should have.
And unfortunately, he's passed away. The actor,
Yeah, Jerry.
Jerry Doyle. But there was an end when he was rebuilding this motorcycle from basically current time, and he was rebuilding it in his spare time, and then I guess what was Billy Mummy's character?
He was.
The hell, he was
Oh,
Delenz. I can't think of his name.
Linear.
Linear. So he goes and he's like, he can, because Garibaldi says, yeah, you can work on it whenever you want. And then Garibaldi comes back and he finishes the whole thing is done. And he even put like a Minbari power source because you can't get gasoline anymore. And then they go drive this thing around the halls. And I don't know why. I just thought that was so funny, and I liked it. Yeah, I guess that's probably part of it. Yeah, because I am a motorcycle rider, so it's like I just like the fact that he was just like, he just built the whole thing. He's like, "What'd you do? You finished it?" He's like, "Well, that's what you wanted," and he's like, "No, the whole point was for me to finish and build it." So
Bruce is saying his favorite is deconstructing of falling stars. That's the one I sent you today. That I was like, why are there Roman numerals? If anybody else saw Roman numerals in the corner of deconstruction of falling stars, let me know. Where they brought back the historical reconstruction, shades of Canticle for Leibowitz. Yes, and good on you for dropping that name. Canticle for Leibowitz, yeah.
I don't know what you're gonna have to. What I don't names of the episodes.
It's a novel by Bruce, who wrote it. Not know that. Hang on, but the whole way they like drew out all the effects down the line. It's reminiscent of that novel.
Oh, okay. I see. Yeah, like I said, I'm trying to think of like Bruce point where the Earth Force is gonna basically try to kick Sheridan out, and then the Minbari show up, and Delenn has her wall line in the sand basically line. Is a great moment. Bester has some great moments where I love when they either get him or he's kind of like, I don't know why you guys hate me so much. He's kind of always like this, regardless of what you think of me, I'm right. And he was like half the time, he had his own agenda, but he was kind of right about stuff, that, he was, as far as what was going on behind the scenes. So what else you guys like? I mean, any final thoughts? We're getting near the end of the hour.
Yeah, we're getting near the end of the hour, so type faster, guys. Everyone start writing.
Want to see what
any moment between Jakar and
Oh, there's so many.
What's his name? Lo, la, la.
You know what? You know what? Oh, here's my favorite Jakar moment. He's eating.
He was the better of the two
He's
bad
sitting there
guys.
eating this food, and is it one of the other guys? Because we didn't even talk about Londo's assistant there. What the hell's his name? I'm terrible today. Maybe I drank too much or something. Um, Veer, that was also played the guy
Yeah.
from Animal House there. But he, I don't know if it was him or somebody comes to Jakar and Jakar's eating this food and somebody goes, oh, where do you where did you get fresh whatever the hell it is? And he goes, oh, not. He goes, it's Swedish meatballs. He goes, somewhere, he goes, some reason every race has a version of these Swedish meatballs. It's one of those weird mysteries of the universe that if we ever found out, it would probably make us all go insane. It was like that was like probably my favorite line of the whole show is every race has Swedish meatballs.
There were a lot of little subtle lines like that just slid under it. That was a good one, but like there was one where Ivanova, like they're all talking like some heavy stuff, and she's just like, "I'll be in the car."
Yeah, yeah,
There all these little subtle things that they just kind of slid in.
yeah.
We thought you were dead. I was. I'm better now.
Spoo. Yes, I can't remember the food. It was Spoo, but I don't know if that was the one. Spoo was the one that the Centauris ate because you had to eat it. You had to eat it like wasn't it like you had to eat it like stale or like really old. If it was too fresh, it was no good. But the Jakar's race would like to eat the Spoo fresh, which was like I guess such like really wrong. It'd be like eating like raw dough or something. I don't know. So anyway, but anyway,
Mr. Okuda is saying, does anyone know where I can get the original version? I just rolled up. Original version of the pilot movie with the original movie and music and effects. I have no idea. Anybody? Anybody? Bueller?
well, wait, where's the question? You know, I don't. Oh, the original
Yeah,
pilot movie. That's a good question. I do not know because I believe they've just rolled the movie into as the first two episodes of the regular season. You know, I think that's what the gathering became. I don't correct me if I'm wrong, but that was the movie was the first two episodes that they ran as the first season. So I don't know if that's even available as a separate. Oh well, Rob Barnes says it's on DVD. The Gathering. So there you go, Mike.
yep.
You're right, Kent. Gin and tonic from Hitchhiker's Guide was also one of those things that always showed it was kind of a universal common thing. Everybody had gin. So I'll take gin over Swedish meatballs, but
We're
you know,
almost done, Willie.
yeah,
We're
8 o'clock,
so
guys.
we wrap it up, we should probably say that I am not going to be the co-host every week. Mike will be choosing different folks depending on what.
Anybody stupid enough to come on?
Who else would like to invite and talk about sci-fi?
Raise your hand now. I don't know. It depends. I guess I got to see. What do you guys think we should do for next week? Do Ghostbusters? You want to do? There's so many good shows from the '90s. I mean, you had mentioned even movies. You mentioned, Fifth Element. I mean, what a great film.
That's brilliant. Buckaroo Banzai.
Buckaroo Banzai is a great one. I am not a Buckaroo Banzai expert. I know the Okudas are.
Maybe.
They would be a good one if they want to do that. Another sleeper show that I always loved in the early '90s was Space Above and Beyond, which I thought was a really good show, which didn't last but was excellent. Highly recommend. Yep, you need to look that one up. Yeah, it was only like 1 or 2 seasons, but it was a really good show. It was in syndication. So that one I would recommend. Let's see. Thank you for coming, Mike and Denise. That really is an honor to have you here.
So I'm just gonna toast you all one last time. Thank you all for being here and listening to us babble for an hour. We hope you were entertained at least.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe I'll put up another poll on my site to see what you guys want to cover. If anybody's an expert on anything, because I am an expert on nothing. I just watch these shows. I don't dig down deep into them like a lot of these fans do. So I really would like somebody.
That's why we call it, but see, that's just it. That's why we call it Sci-Fi Distilled, because we're just distilling down.
It's just our thoughts. Yeah, it's true.
You don't have to be experts to love something.
Not an expert. Not an expert. So, all right, guys. Well, I'm gonna call it. It's 8:02. I'll try to keep it to the hour because I'm sure you all have so much to do with your social distancing, and I'm sure you're very busy. But everybody, stay safe, stay masked up, and we will see you next week. Somebody, I don't know, but with a new
Bye.
drink. Good night.
With a new drink, yeah.